Hi there. My name is Kululwa Mutua, and this is Property Market Moves. I am sitting with Allistiar. How are you?
Well, thanks yourself.
I'm good, thank you. I don't even know when we stop saying Happy New Year. Are we still there? I mean, we're at the end
I
of
think
Jan.
we're into Happy January and welcome to February.
Welcome to February. I was just thinking that when you get through Jan, you know that the rest of the year, because February is the shorter month, and especially because it comes after a long Jan, because Jan has its own burdens.
Absolutely.
So the year is going to fly.
Indeed, I think getting through January on its own is a victory.
Yeah.
So once you're through January, the rest of the year, I think most people are ready for it.
Okay.
And it's business as usual.
Yeah, man. Let's hope for an awesome 2025.
Indeed, we hope so for one and for you guys too.
Okay, so who is Allistiar?
Sure. Allistiar is a professional born and bred in the Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth specifically.
Okay.
My mom's roots stem as far and wide as Umtata.
Oh,
So
Umtata.
That's exactly why I mentioned it. A lot of people are often shocked, but I always say all good people and good things come from the Eastern Cape. Great leaders were born there, so we've got to follow in their footsteps. But school there, attended varsity there.
Okay.
Cut my teeth in the legal space. So I'm a reformed lawyer.
Really? Me
Reformed
too.
lawyer, yeah.
Yeah.
So got an LLB degree through the then UPE and Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University.
Sure.
Went and did my articles at a law firm, did 1 year post articles. And then I decided to join my dad in the construction sector.
Okay.
Helped him start up his business. Got a phone call from IHS, International Housing Solutions.
Yeah.
Came on a 3-month contract to Johannesburg, and the rest is history.
Oh, wow. What a journey. So that's how did you get into property development? You joined your father in construction, and how did you find yourself in development?
Yeah, so I found myself, I think learning through his business was really cutting teeth, and that is from the contractor side of things.
Yeah.
And, how to set up a business, how a business is run. Then sticking to the law principles and coming to IHS as their senior legal counsel at the time, 3-month contract, turned into a permanent employment.
Okay.
Spent about 8 years with them. Did a brief stint at BCX in the ICT sector, also a senior legal advisor, back to IHS. And then I was approached by Calgro.
Oh.
And that's where the property journey actually started.
Okay.
Or shall I say property development journey started. Joined Calgro as their head of legal in 2017, first half of the year. Head of legal 2017, 2018, and in 2019, I just decided, look, there's a gap in the operational team. Let me switch allegiances, see what the operational side of property development is all about.
Yeah.
I also believe that you've got a lot more of a skill set with a legal background, knowing how contracts work, knowing what's enforceable, knowing about timelines.
Yeah.
And then actually just reading a lot into property development. Was involved in the operational team, became a director of Calgro M3 Developments first. And then most recently in September last year, appointed to the board of Calgro, which was 2 years post being appointed managing director of the business.
Okay.
So that's where the property development space was joined. And an exciting journey to date. Really exciting.
Wow. That has been quite a journey. So you've been with Calgro how many years? MD, 2 years?
MD 2 years, with the business for 8 years. Started off, head of legal 2 years, in the operational team.
Yeah.
Executive director and MD 2 years, and with the board now going on 6 months.
Amazing. So development, anyone who wants to be in development, can you walk us through what that process looks like?
So I think first and foremost, property development is a patient game. It's a really, really patient game.
Yeah.
You've got to start off knowing that the journey ahead is not a quick one.
Yeah.
I think that's first and foremost imperative to state that. Then you've got to go and look at concept designs, feasibility studies. So if we take a development, for example, you've identified a portion of land.
Yeah.
What exactly do you envisage with it? Looking at the market around it, can what you've got envisaged for that development actually be sustained, and can it be sustainable in the long run? I think that's also important from the onset. Making sure that your idea can then become conceptualized later on throughout the development process.
Okay.
Once you've done your feasibility study, making sure that the numbers work, very high-level desktop studies.
Okay.
Look around for a couple of guys that can work on risk. I think there's enough professionals out in the industry that are willing to do that, on the proviso that once your deal comes through, once you've acquired the land, which is the next step, that you actually appoint them as your town planners, as your architects, as your QSs, etc., etc. So I think once you've gone through the land acquisition process and legal compliance side of things, it's then making sure that your design and planning speaks to your market.
Okay.
Looking at your market, making sure that your designs are structurally and aesthetically appeasing to an end user consumer, and keeping the end user consumer in mind.
Okay.
Secondly, making sure that do you want an offtake to sell, or do you want to keep it as rental stock?
Okay.
That also, I think, determines how you want to actually develop and how you want to build. Then you've got to go through, I call it regulatory and approvals processes. You've now acquired your land, you've done your feasibility studies, you've done looking at how you're going to actually develop this thing. Are you going to look at funding? Are you going to use some of your own capital to start this up? And then making sure that you've got zoning approvals. Do you need to rezone the property? Do you need to rezone any of the rights at that time that you've actually acquired it?
Sure.
And one of the tricks that I see is actually before acquiring the land, negotiating with the landowner and saying to them, I'll take the risk of buying this property.
Okay.
I'll improve the property with the rights.
Yeah.
Once it's transferred into my name, we then take it through the process.
Okay.
And then, of course, once you've taken that through the process, the land's in your name. You've either rezoned it if it needs to be rezoned to develop to residential. Looking then at a contractor, making sure that you've got a contractor that's registered with the NHBRC. A seasoned contractor is not always easy to find.
Okay.
But I do think we've got enough small builders within the industry that can walk the journey with you, making sure that the contractor keeps you informed every step of the way.
Okay.
But go and visit some of his previous work. Look at the quality. He or she.
Yeah.
Go and look at their quality. Go and make sure that their quality is sufficient for what you're putting into the market before you engage with them.
Yeah.
Contract with the contractor. Use the formats that are out there, the JBCC, typical standard legal agreement that you can use, and make sure that your contract's actually enforceable. You know, we've heard too many stories of contractors walking off site, and there's actually, no repercussions against those contractors. So avoid being in those sort of instances. And then, of course, make sure that your marketing strategy works. I think most developers forget about that. Everyone looks at the beginning stages. We talk about Proxys stages 1 to 6. Everyone looks at that and you think, I'm good. But your sales and your marketing strategy actually need to inform your development. It's no use you've built a beautiful building, it's aesthetically pleasing, and there's no uptake. Absolutely. So I think those are the property development stages that one has got to go through. You've got to consider it, and you've got to be patient.
And how long? I mean, typically would this process take? Is it a year? Is it 5 years? Because once you've, acquired the land, you've got your money, locked in
Absolutely.
into all of these processes you're paying. At what, how long would you generally expect to start putting people in and getting some money?
Depending on the size of your development. So if you look at a sizable development being optimal 250 units, you're looking at anything between 18 and 24 months before you start looking at your first draws. If you're doing residential one, which is not walk-ups, standard freestanding homes, you're looking at anything between 6 and 9 months for the construction period. But there again, the benefit is if you have got bank funding for that, you can then take your land draws up front. The owner pays for the land. And then as you construct, you get different milestones for payment, which helps with cash flow and helps you through the cycle. So there's different ways of structuring that, different ways of managing the cash flow, of course. But I think freestanding homes, anything between 6 and 9 months before you actually see cash in the bag or you're lumpier side of the cash. And then walk-ups, you've got to be in it for at least 18 to 24 months.
Sure. So, we're seeing changes I guess in all spaces, when it comes to property development, what are the current trends that we're seeing shaping the landscape?
So that is actually an interesting one, and I needed to go and apply my mind to that. But in my personal view, you're looking at the current landscape changing, Klua, in terms of live, work, and play.
Mm-hmm.
Young professionals want those amenities around them. So I think you've got to consider that. You've got to make it a vibrant, self-sustaining community in which they want to live. So I think that for me is top of use.
Yeah.
So mixed use development,
Okay.
we can call it that.
Okay.
Then in terms of suburban and I call it rural living, work from home plays such a big role now that you can go back to Mtata or Etala from wherever you're from.
Yeah.
And you can go and work from home for 2-3 weeks at a time, come up to Joburg for a day or two, but then making sure that the areas that you actually go back into are well-developed areas. So I think there's opportunities in those areas as well, and that's where I think trends should start going towards. Varsities and the bigger universities are moving towards that. You look at the likes of Fort Hare.
Yeah.
They're putting up institutions deep into the Eastern Cape, and I'm particularly focused on that because I believe it's my hometown, and that's where one can make a difference, in the long run.
Okay.
But then,
so the students would then have a campus
correct.
closer to...
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. I think that's a trend that I'm seeing and I'm picking up in the market. And then, of course, affordable housing initiatives. How does government and private sector come together? How do we hold hands in making sure that there's, in this day and age, in these economic times with the current interest rates, although hopefully they'll be coming down, I think today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
And another, just a little bit is all we ask for. and making sure that we can build, I call it budget-friendly homes. But in order to do so, we've got to hold hands with government. We've got to make use of subsidies.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to become a lot more of a trend because you're going to get the spatial differences between those that can afford and those that can't afford, and then the missing middle.
Okay.
I think that's imperative. And then I'm not an expert on this, but technology in the real estate space.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many prop techs that have been formed using AI and AI methodologies and making sure that, we can get into the market through virtual AI programs, through blockchain purchases, investment purchases. And I think that's starting to trend and become a lot more appealing for an investor buyer that's looking at a blockchain purchase into property. And it's an easy in. Someone else is taking all the risk, shared risk. And it's easy from an investor point of view. So I think that's trending in my view currently.
Okay. Speaking about the work from home environment, are we seeing more buyers looking for maybe an office home? How do we make that development, more appealing for that, type of buyer?
Yes, I think there's some guys in the space currently that are doing offices on the ground floor where you can come and use a quiet space, work from there. Internet is provided.
Okay.
And if you need a lunch break, you take the lift, you walk upstairs, you're back in your unit, you have your lunch, or you just go to the cafeteria within the same complex, same block of amenities, all just there waiting for you and making sure that you're comfortable having a live, work, and play scenario.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, challenges and risks. I mean, we know that that's the name of the game when you're talking about property development. What are some of the challenges that you're facing right now?
Sure. So I think from a regulatory perspective, it's just the turnaround time. I think we need to empower state-owned entities.
Yeah.
And they're getting there. There's some exciting initiatives coming through from the likes of the city of Joburg,
Okay.
city of Cape Town. Mangaung municipality, as an example, has had an investment conference or the kickoff to the investment conference a couple of weeks ago, where they're now actually using technology and systems where you can virtually upload your building plans for approval. You can track your building plans. You can track your Spluma applications, your Section 7(6) application, and you can do everything online.
Okay.
And I think that's going to alleviate a lot of the blockages currently within the municipality systems.
Yeah.
And going to make development a lot more feasible because your money is not locked up for that long period of time. Capital is important in this industry, and actually unlocking your capital quicker allows you a much faster ROI. I mean,
Especially in the lump, it's a lumpy business. You go through lumpy cash flow cycles. So you don't necessarily want to be waiting 6-7 months for building plan approval.
Yeah.
You want to stick to the time frame. So I think that's a big challenge currently.
Okay.
But I'm also excited to say it is being worked on.
Yeah.
And that excites me. I think if we can get through those backlogs, we'll see a lot more developments coming up. We'll see a lot more entrance into the market. And I think the pie is big enough for everyone to enter into the market.
Okay. And when it comes to, innovation and technology, are we seeing more and more of that in the build space? 3D printing, bricks. Are we seeing any innovation there, or are we still resistant?
Sure. So I think it's a double-edged sword in terms of my answer. I think we're seeing a lot. Again, there are some players that are doing 3D building.
Yeah.
3D printouts where you can mold everything together within the space of 2, 3, 4 days. But, it's a big but.
Yeah.
Traditionally, South Africans, as throughout the country, we want to hear that brick and mortar sound. We want to go, we want to test the quality. We want to do the knock. You want to do, I call it,
yeah.
You want to feel, are there any cracks in the cement? Was the
Yes.
cement mixed properly? But more importantly, it's the consideration between new reforms, 3D building and the like, but actually making sure that the communities that you enter into are sustainable when you leave. So making sure that there's job opportunities, because with 3D printing, you need a very specific skill set and skills resource to either train someone up and allow them barrier or allow them entry into the market,
Okay.
if I can put it that way,
Yeah.
versus the traditional method of brick and mortar. You're creating jobs. You're creating artisans. You're creating a sustainable community. Someone can then go after that development, go and look for a job somewhere else on the skill set that they've built on your development. So there's a fine line between the two. As exciting as what some of it is, it's making sure that, we can actually use it. I definitely think there's a place for it.
Yeah.
But from a Calgro perspective and from my perspective, you've just got to balance that. To the positive side of things, however, I think virtual reality and augmented reality programs in the property development space are becoming key. It's using virtual reality to make sure that the architects can actually visualize the product before it's actually built.
Okay.
So you put on 3D goggles
Yeah.
and you can walk through your building, just using this virtual reality segment. And I think that's exciting. And we've got to introduce that throughout all the segments and spheres of the market.
Okay.
It makes a buyer's decision easier
Yeah.
because they can see it up front.
Yes.
A lot of developers sell off plan. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily wait till the thing's fully built.
Yeah.
So that just makes buying and investment into property development a lot easier. Then, of course, it allows for enhanced collaboration amongst professionals. I can send you what I've got in mind virtually. You put on your VR set or your AR set. Your engineers can look at the depth of your groundwork, look at your geotech studies, and they can collaborate independently of each other in different spaces, identify flaws in the project, identify flaws in the process, and they can actually help you unlock your property a lot quicker. So I think there's definitely exciting trends, and making sure, I think first and foremost, that we allow the adoption of it, but we also allow for the challenges that come with it. I'm a firm believer that in everything that you introduce, especially in the affordable market, you've got to educate everyone throughout the process. Not only the end user consumer, you've got to educate your architects, you've got to educate your QS team, but you've got to allow for them, especially in the younger generation, to come through with innovative ideas, to come through with the AR, to come through with the VR, and actually adopt that into your business.
And I think sometimes we will have some, kind of resistance, especially to anything that we don't know, and imagine that it's super expensive to actually do. So, I mean, you've spoken through, how we integrate, some component of sustainability in our building practices. What is the cost factor with these innovations, and for the buyers? Do they make the properties cheaper or more expensive to buy upfront?
So I'll prefix it by saying there's a lot of industry experts that will argue maybe against saying that it's a little bit more expensive.
Yeah.
But I think that the materials to actually print a 3D home or to mold a 3D home is extremely expensive. So that immediately becomes a barrier to entry for many. You've got, coming back to my earlier point, you need a specific skill set to do that. You've got to train someone up to do that.
Yeah.
And those sort of budget costs, offhand, I've never experienced what they are. I think there is a company doing work in Africa that's tried in South Africa doing that work.
Sure.
But
a complete
3D home. There are some. I've visited one or two, but I'd be lying to you if I tell you the cost impact of that. Like I said, I think it looks beautiful. It's beautiful. It's just not the traditional method that we used to.
Okay.
Maybe I'm a bit old school. I look young. But when you
were
were
a bunch of us, in the build, but we'll get there eventually.
I think if you were reared in the industry by your dad, you've got to stick to the traditional methods.
Now, we know that financing is one of the biggest challenges that especially emerging developers face. What lessons would you share with them, on how to navigate? How do you get your project, funding ready and attractive?
I have to agree with you on that one. I think barrier to entry into the property development space is exceptionally difficult, especially for emerging contractors.
Yeah.
I think firstly, having the capital to roll it out is a challenge on its own. But there are, in my view, Kulu, very manageable methods that you can do upfront, to make sure that you can gain entry into the market. And I think those, I've tried to list them, is build a strong business case with a strong feasibility behind it.
Okay.
And in saying that, funders need confidence that your project is actually a viable one. So you've got to put in the homework and you've got to put in the hard yards to make sure that on paper everything works.
Yeah.
And doing a thorough market study is imperative upfront. Take those numbers, look at what the competitors are doing in the area, and run that through your feasibility.
Okay.
Yes, you might need a 30% return, for example, if that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
But if the number drops to 20%, don't be afraid of actually pursuing the opportunity. Build in buffers into that feasibility where you've got some leeway for something going wrong. Property development, something will always go wrong. Something will always take longer than expected. But build those buffers in from the onset. Prepare a risk analysis for the funders so that they build confidence in you. I always say funders back the jockey, not always the horse. So if you are a capable and strong jockey, you've already got one foot into the door.
Okay.
Then explore diverse sources of funding. Don't just rely on the banks, the traditional institutions. NHFC have got some exciting products out there. DBSA are coming very strongly into the market with their own products that you can look into. Institutions such as TUF. Explore all of those. Go and read up, listen to podcasts such as this, where you can actually benefit, apply your mind. There are so many great things happening in the industry through the likes of Cyberb and what they're doing in the industry, but learn from everyone. Don't be afraid to go to a seasoned developer, without naming them, but there are people that have walked the journey before us. Learn from them, speak to them, speak to those that have failed. Don't go and reinvent the wheel. There's no need to do that.
Yeah.
But learn from their mistakes. Crowdfunding. Another interesting thing that you can look at. Blockchain, setting up, there's many clever IT guys out there. Set up your own blockchain of investors. All the good investment case for them to invest into your development.
Sure.
Look at leveraging government support. FLISP or first home finance as it's currently known. Understand how that works. What sort of benefit does that allow to your market if you're going to play in that sort of space?
Okay.
Take that number, take the benefit, run it through your feasibility again. It looks a lot more appealing, a lot more appetizing if you start looking into things like that. Strengthen your track record, your credit record. Make sure that you don't enter into unnecessary credit debt once you take out a loan from financial institutions. I think that's also important. Start with smaller projects. There's no need to go and build 1,000, 2,000 unit development, generally on the outskirts of somewhere. Not making sure that it's sustainable in terms of someone not needing to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to take a bus at 4:30 to get to work at 8. But go and look for a smaller development in some of the smaller nodes where you can actually cut your teeth. And that's not looking into the bigger type of stuff.
Okay.
Secure pre-sales. I think that's a big one.
Yeah.
Or pre-commit tenants into your development once it's at a certain percentage of completion. If you follow all of that steps in my view, it's really making sure that you've ticked all the boxes.
Sure.
That will help emerging developers come into the market a lot more smoothly and a lot more confidently. I think that's also important, is entering the market with confidence, not arrogance, confidence.
Yes. And to the emerging developer, this person who only has maybe a piece of land that they've stumbled upon or that has been in the family for some time, they don't really understand, all of these processes. To get this feasibility study that you keep referring to, who do you find? What kind of professional or professionals do you need? And what does it tell you?
So I think a feasibility, in my view, is run by your quantity surveyor.
Okay.
So your quantity surveyor is numbers, numbers, numbers. So what your feasibility tells you is how viable is this project to do.
Okay.
So you take your land costs, you plug it into it. I call it's a glorified Excel spreadsheet. You put your land cost in, put your development cost in, put your funding in,
Okay.
put your sales price in,
Yeah.
and let it kick out a number for you that says, I would like a return of investment of X. You then got to take your return of investment of X after all of those numbers kick out.
Yeah.
But once it gives you your return on investment, you've then got to go and recalculate or revalue engineer. Put in your NHBRC costs. Put in your legal costs for transfer. Put in, what am I missing? Advertising and sales and marketing costs.
Okay.
Marketing and sales commissions. But it's plugging all of those individual numbers into the spreadsheet and checking what your bottom line is and making sure that you're actually comfortable with it. So it's very feasible to do it on a normal Excel document, but I would recommend you look for a QS that has the basic understanding.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be a senior QS, can be a junior for as long as it's the basic understanding, especially for the scenario that you've used.
Okay. You mentioned upfront that this is a long game. For someone who's starting out, what are some of the risks and rewards even that they can look forward to?
The risks are always be patient. I think, and when I say be patient in terms of that being a risk, is should there be a site stoppage, as an example?
Yeah.
The risk is there, but be patient that you'll get through it. Be patient that you've got to work with the community that you're actually developing in. Develop for the community. So mitigate the risk.
Okay.
Locking your capital up for too long. Not understanding the municipal process. If you're just going to submit your building plans and hope for the best without consulting a town planner, the risk sits there. So I think that there are those risks. And just being patient, I think, for me is key.
Okay. And the rewards?
Sure. I think that's why I'm personally in the property development space, property at large. Your rewards are, other than financial, is seeing someone move into a home for the first time.
Yeah.
Putting a roof above someone's head that has not necessarily grown up in the perfect circumstances.
Sure.
We've got so much of a backlog in terms of people wanting to move into dignified homes. I don't necessarily call it a flat or a unit, it's a home.
Yeah.
It's 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, even a bachelor flat. It's someone that you look through them and they are immensely proud of acquiring their first property, even for an investment purpose. Sometimes people think the young generation are boastful. Everything must come to them so easily.
Yeah.
But seeing a young professional buy his first bachelor flat and the smile on his or her face,
Yeah.
those are the rewards for me. It's unlocking so much more potential within that individual from there onwards. So for me, that's the biggest reward and that's the biggest purpose, I think, is being part of someone's journey.
Yeah.
It's a big investment. Granted that on
different scales, 100,000 to me looks completely different to 100,000 to the next person.
Yeah.
But buying a home of 400,000 and buying a home of R1 million, you've got exactly the same sense of gratitude that the person goes through.
Oh,
And for me, that's the biggest reward.
man. So, what do you think are the key elements that will define successful developments in the next 10 years?
Sustainability of that development. It's really making sure that in able to leave a lasting impression, is your development looking good when you come back in 10 years' time? Making sure that you leave a healthy body corporate behind. Again, depending on where you develop, and I take the Calgro example, where we develop in Fleurhof or in Soweto, for example. Going back there, looking at the building and being proud of it when you actually go back. Leaving behind key things such as solar panels.
Yeah.
Sustainable mechanisms of making sure that the body corporate can run efficiently and that you've allowed for these sustainable measures in the long run.
Okay.
But also leaving behind a community that's proud of what they've got.
Yeah.
And walking away from that, watching kids play in the play areas and the amenities that you've created within that development. And again, making sure that you've used sustainable material that's not going to fade or wilt within 12 months of you exiting the development. So I think that becomes imperative in the market that we play in.
So when you look back on your career, is there something that stands out that you wish you would have known, when you were starting out, that could have avoided you? Granted, it may have given you some lessons, but that it could have avoided you some pain.
Some pain. I love how you put that. But I think learning to understand the concept of property development way earlier. I always believed that I've been a sponge for information.
Okay.
And I found that out way later in life when I decided that being a legal practitioner, being a lawyer or an attorney is just not for me. But where to from here? And yes, the opportunity presented itself to become involved in the operational team.
Yeah.
But I jumped so deep into the waters that I needed to go and sit back and think, okay, shucks, where to from here? What is a section 7.6? What is town planning? I'm not a town planner. Do I have to go and study this? Do I need to go and... But reading and immersing yourself into it, knowing that you'll get there at the end of the day. So to your point, lessons learned.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's necessarily one instance that has stood out and said, shucks, that actually was something I'd wish I'd not repeat again, because everything has been so fruitful. It's been a journey where it's been guided into the right direction. And I think once you immerse yourself into that, it becomes a lot easier looking back and saying, hey, those were hard times. And there will always be hard times, but I now know how to navigate it. So as much as what I'm saying, there'll be opportunities and challenges ahead.
Yeah.
I know how to navigate them because of lessons learned. And there's a whole host of them.
Now, you've spoken to, when we were talking about, the work from home concept, some of the smart technologies. Are there any more like smart technologies that we're seeing integrated into developments, or that we anticipate will be coming in the near future?
Yes, I think, again, Kulua, coming back to the property development being sustainable.
Yeah.
So I know this might not necessarily give gravitas to the question in terms of what other smart technologies there are, but I do believe that we've made significant strides towards sustainability, shifting from the conventional approach, being climate conscious. So thinking of things such as, and what is a sustainable property development?
Yeah.
Key items and key things that I believe we've now gotten stricter building regulations in terms of the SANS 1400 codes, making sure that there's thermal insulation within your buildings, efficient lighting, and passive designs of your buildings. How do you orientate your building to make sure that it becomes passively designed in such a way that it's optimal usage, but it actually allows for flows through it? Of course, taking into consideration fire, etc., and the like.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Green Building Council of South Africa, the GBCSA, making sure that if you would like, getting registered and certified through the GBSA or GBCSA. But again, solar panels, I think that's a big one. Water heating mechanisms that you can use. Light bulbs that you can use in terms of the wattages, making sure that they become sustainable. And even something as small as your toilet mechanisms that you use to flush. Many people take it for granted that your toilet will flush, X amount of liters per flush. But you can actually limit that to flush a lot less. So you become a lot more sustainable in terms of your development. PV panels, looking at HVAC, your heating and aircon ventilation systems. How does that play a role in your development, and making sure that your development is sustainable again through those measures? I believe those become key. Another one for me is water conservation. Turning rainwater harvesting. It's these small things that we don't think of that actually make a difference in, again, your development becoming sustainable, but also using these alternative mechanisms to make sure that we get there and that we can become a lot more climate conscious, because I think that's also where the world is going.
Yeah. All right. Well, I learned quite a bit, and I think we take it for granted that when you have a piece of land and an intention, you have a winning, development. But I think it's important then to do your due diligence, as you correctly point out, and actually just tick those boxes and not be afraid of finding people. You spoke about the number of professionals that are willing to work on risk. Now I understand when you're a Calgro or someone who's been in the game for a while, you've built up, those networks. For a startup guy, do you think that reality is, that is a reality for them?
I still believe it is a reality for them, especially the startup guy. I consider myself a little bit entrepreneurial at heart.
Okay.
But if you were to go and just look at a final year student to help you, where you don't necessarily have to fork out big capital costs, but getting a final year student to come and assist.
Okay.
On a part-time basis.
That's
because they've traveled through the journey they've got the book knowledge and they're looking to impose themselves in the market. And it's not to say that they'll do it as a once-off, but it also helps them understand business.
Absolutely. And that also gives them then a foot in the door, right?
Correct.
Starting to work and actually put their theory into practice.
Absolutely. So I think if you use ideas like that, Joe Soap as a startup can definitely look at those mechanisms and not necessarily, rely on his own intuition and having to go to the big firms. But nothing stops them from chatting to a Calgro, knocking on Calgro's door and saying, guys, I've got this development. Are you prepared to hold my hand through it? You know, should the company have resources to be able to do it? I think it's a good initiative. I think it's a good idea. But again, all resource dependent.
Brilliant. So the last question comes from the guest that we hosted previously. And before you leave, we'll take a question from you for the next guest. What caliber of leaders, what kind of responsibility do we think that leaders carry today, especially with the kind of, power and influence that they hold? So how should a leader hold themselves?
So I think as a leader in today's times, you've got a very blended mix of the elderly that firstly you've got to respect. And then you've got young, up-and-coming, emerging leaders. And I call myself one of them. But you've got to have the respect, I'll touch on that again, respect for the elders. But you've got to have a sense of knowing within the industry. You've got to put yourself out there and be able to network with everybody. Second to that, you've got to be a leader that has a strong moral compass. You've got to know what is right. You've got to know what is wrong. Never be seduced by opportunity. And that I've learned again from one of our board members is you might be presented with an opportunity today to make a quick turnaround time in something.
Sure.
But consider, is it the right thing to do for the long run? So you must be forward looking as a leader. You've got to look back, see who's watching, who's following in your footsteps, who are you mentoring unintentionally?
Sure.
And who is looking up to you for inspiration and guidance? And then I think lastly is don't be afraid to be a leader that also looks back and says, how can I hold your hand through something? And in holding your hand through something, I am learning. Don't be a leader that thinks you know it all. Learn from others. Be adaptable. Be amenable. Be susceptible to others. And in encouraging others to do better, to be better, we'll grow a better society. And I think that is imperative on leaders today, is making sure that the society following up behind us is empowered, but empowered in such a way that they know how, when, what, and why. You can't just say empowered in the sense of, I need housing. Empower them to know why and how to get there. And I think if you can follow those principles as a leader, you've done sufficiently well. You can look back, you can be proud, but you can also look back and see the journey. Look forward. I touched on it earlier. There have been giants that have walked this industry before us. I look as an example to some of the leaders in the industry. Mr. Sylvester Martin, I think, is one of my beacons of hope. The challenges that they've gone through. How do I aspire to be like someone else? So for me, those are the principles that make a good leader. Just to summarize maybe.
Sure.
Know your why. Moral compass. Strong leadership ability in the sense of empowering others. And don't be afraid to build a team around you that knows more than you. As a departing comment.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer I don't know it all. But there are so many skill sets in the industry that if I build a strong team around me, it will empower me as a leader to create more leaders, and it will allow them to pass knowledge down to others within the industry.
To our developers and our future developers, I really hope that you take the time to listen to this conversation and be empowered, inspired, and educated along your property development journey. Thank you, Allistiar. That was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a privilege and an honor, and I feel excited to be part of the podcast, to be part of Cyberb. I'm excited with what Cyberb is doing. been a member now, again, introduced by Sylvester Martin a couple of years ago. And I think Cybub in itself is doing so many great things. Even just the idea of this podcast, following the podcast, learning from it has been inspirational in my journey. So I've got to thank you guys for it. I've got to thank you for your leadership. And I've got to wish you all the best. Keep empowering us. Keep empowering the youth. And keep empowering Cybub.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.